Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Flying Lap podcast. I'm Chester.
I'm Thomas.
And so we have another full English show today. And joining us is Martin Buchan, former F1 Aerodynamics design engineer at Force India and also Racing Point. So, Martin, it's such a pleasure to have you here.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
I guarantee it's a pleasure staying here.
We are going to have a great show for everyone. Trust us. And okay, let's just talk about, Martin, your F1 stint. I think it's so interesting. You were there. You were at Force India / Racing Point, and during 2020, I think like everyone's mind just went to
what's the
pink
truth behind.
The thing was that Force India at the time, when I joined in 2017, was always a team that was like trying to be like Red Bull. We got the technical basis from Mercedes, but always tried to copy the Red Bull, which was always something we struggled with because if you think about engine and gearbox came from Mercedes, so rear suspension setup came from Mercedes with a low rake setup, so the car was low at the back. And Red Bull was exactly doing the opposite thing. So they always had a very high car at the back, so high rake setup. So we always tried to get a high rake setup with the Mercedes suspension, for example, which was always tricky to do. That's why Force India sometimes was performing quite well, like in 2017, sometimes struggling. And in 2018, we basically went bankrupt. So I was also dealing with a lot of suppliers. So, and suddenly people told me, no, you can't tell them to do anything anymore. We don't have the money to pay them anymore. We have outstanding invoices and stuff. So I went down to my colleagues in the workshop and I asked them, is that normal? Does that happen often? What's going on here? And they said, yeah, that happens all the time. Just don't worry. and then Stroll took over. We became Racing Point. So Stroll said, what do you need? And we said, yeah, we need everything. We need new computers. We need new chairs, new seats. Everything was old
How about
and broken.
A new name?
New name, yeah.
It has no point.
No one knew.
Like, why?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Why not Stroll Racing or something? Yeah.
People were also making fun and saying it's Racing Dot or something like this. So it was just a very quick idea.
Yeah.
They just quickly needed a name until they could buy Aston Martin in the background and then officially become the Aston Martin Works team.
I think that's one of the most generic racing teams sounding names ever, like more generic than
exactly.
XGP.
And we even had a point on our race suits, on our racing jackets and stuff. So it was just a point, right? That was our logo.
Yeah.
He was always complaining about the performance of Williams at the time. So then the opportunity came up to buy Racing or to buy Force India. And Force India was fourth best team at the time, so it was a pretty good deal for them. Also, Force India had their own wind tunnel, for example, the old Jordan wind tunnel in Brackley, and there's opportunity to make some money to rent it out to other racing teams. And then the year after, we got informed that there are some talks in the background with Aston Martin. So Stroll asked us, what do you need? So of course you need to pay all the bills and need new machines. For example, I had a computer where I couldn't open the whole assembly of the car and rotate it because the computer was so slow. So
wow.
we really needed new stuff. And this is how we were working at Force India.
So
Force
under
India.
that circumstance, you got into number 4 in the championship ranking. So what specifically the struggles you had, except for the one you mentioned with very slow computer not running appropriately?
I mean, we were also a very small team, while the others were like 800 people and more. So the top teams, we were just about 400 when I joined in 2017, and that's for everything. I mean, of course, we didn't have an engine department or something. We got the engines, drivetrains from Mercedes. But still, you only have 400 people to create 2 cars, which sounds a lot in other categories. But in Formula One, it's actually not a lot. Half of that is engineering. So 200 engineers, 200 mechanics in production and so on.
Actually, you just mentioned that the whole team was trying to copy Red Bull, but they're all using Mercedes gears. Why not copy Mercedes? Well, which you did, but like, why initially you were trying to copy Red Bull?
Because we always got Red Bull people, or we also had Red Bull people in charge. For example, they could secure Guru Yo, so an ex-Red Bull aerodynamicist who became our chief aerodynamicist, and that's why we were always looking at Red Bull at the time, right? So Guru always tried to make the Red Bull concepts work on our car, and he was not the only one. So not just our chief aerodynamicist, we had a lot of people from Red Bull, and it was a naturally or natural progression basically in the industry, that people start in Force India right after graduation. Then they do their first 2-3 years. And then they go to Red Bull, for example, because it's just around the corner. Milton Keynes is not so far away from Brackley and from Silverstone.
It's like close. A technical junior team.
Yeah, and that was one of the struggles that also might explain the performance of the team, because we always had young people, because it was easy to get into Force India. Force India never had money; they always needed cheap labor, so the cheapest people you can get are the graduates. But they also start with a fresh mind, so they don't have any previous bad experience, bad habits, so you can shape them. If these people are good and running and can do stuff on their own, they leave the team. So that was always the struggle we had every time.
So how about let's talk more about the 2020 saga. Let's say. During winter testing, we saw, wow, that Racing Point looks really familiar compared to last year's Mercedes.
What's the internal from Red Bull system? To Mercedes one.
Talk about more from the inside. What happened that winter or like the year before?
We were always, like I said, trying to copy the Red Bull stuff. And then when Stroll came in, he said, what do we need to do to be at the front of the field? And of course, the obvious strategy is always to copy the best car. And the best car in 2018, 2019 was the Mercedes. So we said, okay, we already have the Mercedes drivetrain. We have the best basis of copying them. So let's copy the whole car. And we wanted to do that before, but we never had the resources to do it because it takes a lot of resources to copy the whole car of another team. Another thing that happened at the time when Stroll came in was also he asked us, what are the limitations you have? So one of our limitations was that we were using the wind tunnel of Toyota in Cologne, which means that every couple of days we needed to pack a van in the UK, send it over to Germany, to Cologne with the model. If you forgot anything, it's not in the wind tunnel, right? So it's always a far distance. And we had people who were employed only to drive the van back and forth. They were constantly driving between Cologne and Brackley. So one of the first things he did was he negotiated the arrangement with Mercedes that we used their wind tunnel. So we had the wind tunnel in Brackley and we shared it with Mercedes. And Mercedes was very careful with this because they, as the dominating team, they didn't want to be caught out by cooperating with a smaller team or giving them some sensitive data. So Mercedes was actually very accurate about all that. So they didn't give us any data. We didn't have any contact to their engineering team. They used the wind tunnel so during the week, we used the wind tunnel only at the weekend. So we never really met there. We just used the same wind tunnel. So when we decided to copy their car, it was clear that we wouldn't get anything from Mercedes. And we also didn't want to, because everybody knows that if our car will look like their car the next year, Mercedes will be in trouble. There will be news about it and people will ask all sorts of questions. So from the very beginning, we were in talks with the FIA. We told them exactly what we will do. We asked them about it and we always kept them in the loop of what we were doing. And the difficult thing is to copy another car just in general and to make it work for you, because you don't have all the information. You can look at a wing and you can make the wing look like this, but you don't really know which exact profile did they use. Unless the car had a crash and you see the broken off wing from the side or something like this, you can re-engineer it. But just by looking at a car, you can make it look like the other one. You can copy that so that it looks the same, but it still doesn't have to work the same way. So actually copying a car is more difficult than just creating your own.
So yeah, how did you guys made it work? It was performing so well in the 2020 season, and obviously gave Sergio Perez his first win in Formula One.
The future in Red Bull, pretty much you guys did it. Without the wing, you will never be a Red Bull driver.
I also had older colleagues in the design team, and they said, this copying rarely works. Like out of 10 times, maybe once out of 10 times works. Usually it doesn't work. And we also, like in Formula One, you're constantly copying aero concepts of other teams. So pretty often it doesn't work because even if aerodynamicists, F1 aerodynamicists look at other F1 cars, they can still get it wrong. So only the engineer who really designed it knows exactly what was going on there. And sometimes things are misinterpreted and then they do the wrong thing. The way how we could make it work was, first of all, we really copied the whole thing from pictures. So we had lots of pictures of a Mercedes car. And first of all, everyone in the design office stopped their work on their 2020 car because we already had a 2020 car based on the 2019 Racing Point. But we stopped that, and everybody chose one area of the car and worked on it and copied that to the greatest detail possible, just based on pictures. And then in the end, within relatively short time, I think within 2 weeks, we had the whole Mercedes on the screen. So we had our own design, which looked exactly like the Mercedes on the screen. We put it in CFD, and it was so much worse than our own car. It looked like the dominating car, but it was so much worse. And also we then created the wind tunnel model, which is a big job for such a small team, because you are lucky that you have one working wind tunnel model, and suddenly you have to build a second one. And also the wind tunnel model was the same thing. It looked like the Mercedes, but it was just so much worse than our own car. So a lot of people within the company already questioned that and said, was that really the right choice? Because now we spent like 4 weeks on copying the other car, which is a long...
So wait a second. Let me pause a little bit. So the original idea was from Stroll himself?
No, Stroll just asked us, what do we need to do to get you to the front of the field? And then the design team said, the obvious thing is to copy the fastest car.
Okay. Let's understand who's under the most pressure at this moment.
Stroll just always said, whatever you need, you can have it. You just need to tell me. So you already have the better wind tunnel. I paid all your bills. So what's next?
Okay. So now it's not working in the wind tunnel, which he paid.
Exactly.
So what's the next step?
The next step was that we could see in a lot of areas why it didn't work. For example, you had separations in some areas, the wing profiles were too aggressive and things like this. So basic stuff like this. After fixing this, it was already getting better, and we could come close to our own car. And then we had a lot more potential to develop this further. So in every single area, we could optimize it and fix the issues that we could see in CFD and in the wind tunnel. And because it was a completely new concept, we had a lot more potential to improve. And suddenly it was getting better and better in huge steps compared to our own car.
Okay, so basically it's by switching to the Mercedes long wheelbase, low rake concept that enables you guys to develop and have more potential.
So you copied the whole car and didn't work. So what did you inject it to that prototype?
Was it just like small tweaks?
This is lots of small tweaks coming all together, because there were lots of small issues. I mean, the car was, if we say it's not working, it was worse than our own car, but it wasn't completely off. It was worse, but it wasn't far away. So we could then fix it with lots of small tweaks. And there were lots of design ideas we didn't do. And usually, if you just think about the rear wing, the way how Mercedes was shaping the trailing edges of the wing at the time, and the way how the end plates looked like. If we would have designed that at Racing Point, for example, we would do it in steps, in multiple iterations until we get there, always making sure that it works. And now we just copied the entire thing just within very short time. And it didn't really work yet. It wasn't really good. But then we could see how it could work, and then we made it work. So with lots of small tweaks, and suddenly the optimized version of the copy was suddenly much better than our own one.
Oh, interesting. So basically, you guys have like the final solution of the Mercedes demonstrating that this concept can work and will work. And you guys just follow it first and then slowly optimizing to reach the final potential. Just like the nose cone, right? The 2018 and 2017 Force India is like the Red Bull style nose. And then in the RP20, it switched to the Mercedes like slim with the cape.
Yeah, exactly. Completely different concept. We didn't know about this concept, how this works, but then we just copied it and we could see how it can work. There were still some things were off. So we corrected that, because you don't always have the perfect angles of all the profiles and stuff. So you just tweak these little things and suddenly it starts working better. And suddenly there's a lot more potential you can work with.
So in a bigger picture, saying is Mercedes concept has bigger potentials that you didn't know before.
Yeah, because for example, creating a new nose cone is a big thing for a small team, because you need to crash test it and you can't just constantly change the nose cone. So we always stick with what we had basically from 2015, 2016. It was the same concept with the holes inside, which was a good concept for a small team, but it didn't give us the big space at the front to make the front wing work better. So we went to the slim nose of the Mercedes, and then suddenly also because of Stroll's backing, we suddenly had the resources to do that.
Ah, okay. So I guess Stroll's input or the capital he brought in was a like very, very special and important role. So a little bit sensitive question is about, did you guys actually use the 3D scanning that was later banned in 2020 to, get the 3D geometry of the Mercedes?
So as one of the engineers who was also copying it, I can tell you I didn't have any 3D scans for me. I just had pictures.
And okay, so only from pictures.
Yeah, so I was also copying various parts of the Mercedes, and I just had pictures, and I just made it look like the Mercedes, like I said, and then we see in CFD what works, what doesn't work so well, and then we tweak it. But we didn't have any scans, but the scanning technology was starting to come up in F1 at the time. And also,
so it's just coincidence that it got banned in like 2020, start of 2021, right?
I mean, all of the Formula One teams were working with this because the suppliers of this 3D scanning technology were going around from team to team and showed their technology. I mean, everyone is looking into that. And basically what they had was like photographers running through the pit lane, looking at the cars. And then just with these pictures, you could create 3D models. But to be honest, from a designer's point of view, the resolution wasn't really good. So you can have something on the screen, but it's still better if you do it yourself, because you can't scan wing profiles properly, and if they're just a little bit off, their performance is different.
Amazing. I have some pictures. Can you make me a transformer?
Yeah.
Yeah, just like that. Well, but it didn't go totally smooth till the end, because we know Racing Point was hit by a 15-point deduction and also a 400,000 euro fine in the end. I think it's your guys' design, but that rear brake ducts. Tell us about that.
You have to understand that there's always a lot of politics involved in Formula One. So it's not just about the technical stuff. And also a lot of the people who report about technical stuff are not engineers, have never worked in engineering departments. So sometimes there are some crazy stories out there.
I know that's when you left the team, but are you aware anything happened when the 2023 car looks exactly like Red Bull?
The 2023, no, I mean, they did it again, yeah. they already had the experience.
Oh, they really did it again, okay.
No, it's just a very normal thing in Formula One to just constantly copy stuff, right?
Yeah, so Aston Martin said, we did it once, we'll do it again.
Team.
I mean, okay, so tell us more about the 2020 version. Let's stick to the version 1 first. The brake ducts, because it was non-listed parts before 2020 and it became listed parts. Is that the reason why it got?
I mean, it wasn't a listed part in 2019, so it was fine, and then they used it in 2020. So, like I said, you have to understand that there's a lot of politics involved, and you cannot just bring a car that looks exactly like the competitor's car of the previous year without this going unnoticed, right? So there was a lot of trouble, and I think Alpine was it at the time, they were protesting against it, and they couldn't just let it go. So FIA couldn't just let it go. They couldn't just say it's fine what they did, because then every team would do that. So there needed to be some sort of punishment, but because, like I said, before we started copying the Mercedes, we talked to the FIA, we kept them in the loop every step of the way, and it was fine with them. They knew about everything we are doing, and that suddenly they had to come up with some kind of punishment, because otherwise every team would do that. And then to deduct 15 points for a small team like Racing Point was not good, but on the other hand, there was also a win, and they were scoring more points at the time, and 400,000 euro fine is a lot of money. But if you compare it to what Racing Point gained in that year by having such a fast car, it's not really a lot. So it's a relatively small punishment, but there needed to be some punishment and some news about you're not allowed to copy your car completely to avoid other teams from doing it. But like I said, FIA was in the loop, but there's always some politics in Formula One, and you don't always understand it.
So we can conclude it with FIA betrayed you guys. It was a deal.
It was a deal somehow. Yeah, they said, we can't really
bastard.
we can't really let you off the hook completely. We have to give you a little bit of punishment. So this is how these things come up.
Well,
yeah, because in 2020, you guys missed out on finishing third in the construction champion by only 7 points. So those 15 points actually cost you guys like more than the 400,000 by finishing one place lower.
Yes, but we also knew what was coming for the next year, and we had a good basis for that. But the problem was in 2021 they changed the regulations to make the Mercedes suffer. So this cutouts in the floor. Without that, we would have had a really good car for 2021. But with these cutouts, it was really hard, as you could see with Mercedes and Red Bull.
Do you have more stories that you can share, like those really interesting? For example, the 2023. Like we know Dan Fallows moved to Aston Martin. You guys, well, that was Aston Martin did it again.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, copying stuff in Formula One is normal, but usually it's just separate areas like bargeboard area, rear wing, or bodywork concept. In that case, again, they said which one is the dominating car. And I mean, 2022 was a huge regulation change and cars looked very different. Teams went in opposite direction almost. And the question was, again, what do we need to do to be at the front of the field? So the best thing is to copy the best car. Maybe not entirely, maybe underneath it's still different, but the bodywork concept and the concept of large downwashing side pods, for example, was a winning concept. So why not copy that? And if there is a team which is dominating, then let's copy this one and see how it goes for us. And that's very normal in Formula One, not just with the Silverstone-based team, also with others.
But I mean, like the 2023 car was less similar, like compared to the RP20.
Yeah.
Okay. So another thing I think you mentioned in your YouTube channel was the phase-changing tire cooling theory. Can you tell us more about that? About the now dominating McLaren?
Yeah. So I was writing my master thesis at McLaren in 2017. Actually, first I wanted to write my thesis at Manor Formula One, so the team that then didn't make it to the 2017 grid. So they called me and said, "Oh, we're really sorry, but you can't come here. We are bankrupt." And because I wanted to start there as a cooling engineer because they didn't have anyone working on cooling, and I was a cooling engineer from Audi, so that would have worked well, but didn't work out. Actually, Nicolas Tompasi was the head of aerodynamics at the time. So the FIA guy now. So after this didn't work, I started at McLaren. There are lots of people that are interested in aerodynamics, right? So lots of people who graduate want to work in aerodynamics in F1, but there are not so many people who know about cooling. So I concentrated on aerodynamics/cooling. So I wrote my thesis about phase-changing materials. That is something that was really interesting for electric cars at the time. So for battery cooling and keeping things at the same temperature, especially for batteries, it's very important that you keep it at the optimal temperature for the best performance on the track. And my thesis was basically about an alternative cooling system for a Formula E car, because Formula E cars, so they only had 30-minute races at the time. They had a huge cooling system, which was pretty much overheating after the half an hour. So I was working on an alternative system which gives you a lot of aerodynamic advantages because you have less air intakes or no air intakes, and you can keep the battery temperature at the optimal point. So basically, instead of going all the way up, you just have such a permanent temperature for a while, and after this it's heating up again. So during the phase change. Now, when people reported about the McLaren this year and how their tire performs, it was exactly the same behavior. So people always said they heat up exactly the same way like all the other teams. But then while all the others are overheating, the McLaren keeps it constant. So the McLaren can still perform and they have less tire wear. So these are all indicators for that the tire is in the optimal temperature and they keep it there. So how do you keep that there? They don't have additional cooling. They also don't have more cooling than the others because the heating up is exactly the same as the others. Especially in hot races, they have the advantage. So that's why, I made a video about where I just explained to people what the topic is, because there were a lot of crazy stories floating around in the internet.
Like watering tires and those weird theories.
And then people complained about that I just described what the issue is, but I didn't give them a solution. And then I thought, I can give you one hint. if I would be the engineer and I would do it with the phase changing thing. And suddenly this whole video went viral and everybody was talking about it and got a lot of messages because it seems to be...
From whom? McLaren ask you to take it down?
No. No, but lots of media stuff, lots of newspapers and stuff were suddenly interested in that. And because it seemed to be the only reasonable explanation at the time, or maybe even today. And when I was reading the report, so of course they investigated the McLaren and they took the wheel or the brake assembly apart. They couldn't see anything there. Of course, you can't see it there because I wouldn't put it there. I would put it somewhere else. And
so where would you put it? Under the cake tin?
I mean, first of all, you need to understand how you heat up the tires because you have tire blankets, for example. This is just to preheat them. But during the race, most of the heating up comes from the brakes. And for the heat to get from the brakes to the tires, they need to go through the brake assembly and then into the rims and then into the tires. Right. And so it needs to be somewhere on that way. So you can also see different cooling structures, heat rejection structures in the rims of Formula One teams. So these are really important surfaces. The opposite surface is the brake drum. And the brake drum is just a large carbon fiber cover for the brake assembly. And this is pretty much where I would put this because it's a very simple carbon fiber part. It's just a large round piece. It's the direct part opposite of the rim. So this is the brake drum temperature decides on the rim temperature because this is where the heat will go. Yeah, this is pretty much where I would put this too. So you would have phase changing material in the brake drums, which means that the heat that's coming from the brakes is going into the drum, is melting the material inside there. And as long as it's melting, it keeps the same temperature, which means the tires are not being overheated. So the rims stay at the same temperature as well. And that would be a good...
So after you explain it, it makes perfect sense since like teams need the tires to warm up quickly, but not exceeding their working temperature. And phase changing material is like exactly what they need. So why didn't anyone else try the same thing?
Yeah, I mean, you always need a good idea and you need to do it. And even that it's obvious, it's also quite hard to engineer, to be honest. And
so do you think the start of 2023, McLaren had a lot of issue for their brake drum assembly during the winter testing? So is that a possibility that they were testing the theory back then? I think they are working on it like every single day. They had malfunction and problems with the brakes and stuff during like 23 and also 24.
It could be that they got the idea at this time, but I wouldn't say that it has to be connected because it was a new regulation. They had the new like airflow. They were not allowed to have any outwash anymore. So a lot of teams were struggling with brakes. Just McLaren was struggling the most. At this time, it was just important for them to be somewhere in the mix because they were at the very end. So I think they had other issues at the time, but maybe they got the idea at this time.
Okay, let's just assume it's something very interesting to think about. Yeah, nothing real, nothing fake. It's just like
nothing concrete right now, but we'll see maybe.
And it's also like a very standard thing in Formula One is that you engineer something to distract other people, or you design something to hide something, so to speak. So, for example, this brake drum would be the perfect thing. That's why I would do it that way. Or if someone tells the FIA to check the brakes, the first thing they do is take the brake drum off and put it away and look at the brakes. So no one looks at the drum, you know?
Like under the coat.
Yeah. And even if you put it away, so such a brake drum is a shiny carbon fiber piece. So you wouldn't put it on the ground. You would always stand it upright. If it's upright, even if someone is taking a picture of it, you can't look inside. So you don't see what's inside.
And also, this thing is actually perfectly legal, right? According to the technical regulation.
Yeah.
Just some material inside. There is no like regulation mandates that it needs to use some kind of material.
Exactly,
compared to, like water flowing through it. That wouldn't be like correct.
Yeah. And if you look at the technical regulations and the material list they have, it's actually quite a old list with very conservative materials. And it only says that the material shouldn't get weak when driving. So, for example, you shouldn't have wishbones made of jelly, for example, so they become weak while driving, but no one talks about phase change material because it's not in the list. It's not really holding anything. It's not a structural part.
I actually have a question about, since we all know teams and FIA are they're like a revolving doors. But still, like when FIA go check on those teams' technical issues, is it because like teams normally hires, because they pay better to hire better people compared with FIA, scrutinizers? So it's more likely that teams will successfully cheat FIA because of this reason.
I mean, usually you don't really try to cheat. The first thing that teams are doing when you're designing something is always to keep it legal, right? And if you're working, like if you're the design engineer in a certain area, you have to be the expert in there. So you have to know what all the other teams are doing in the same area. You have to know the regulations in that area inside out. And if you see a gray area, and gray area doesn't mean it's cheating. It just means that you interpret the regulations slightly different, or you read between the lines, then you do it. And you always think about how long is it going to take until this is going to be discovered. And until then, how much advantage will I have? So this is always the thinking in the design offices.
Okay, just another quick question. What was your responsibility when you were at Force India / Racing Point? Like, which part of the car were you managing?
I was in the so-called middle group. So I was first of all, I was employed as a aero designer. Aero designer is between the aerodynamics development and the production of the parts. So you talk with the aerodynamicist about new concepts. For example, we want to have a new wing. And then we discuss how it should look like. And then I'm the one designing the wing and making sure that it can be produced. And but the thing was that I came to Racing Point or to Force India as a former Audi aerodynamicist and cooling engineer. So I was already on the other side. I was working as an aerodynamicist, and now I'm an aero designer. So I could do both a little bit. I could also have my own ideas and design them at the same time, so which was really nice. Then these design departments and teams are always structured either in front group and rear group. So the one department only working at the front of the car, the other group only at the back. At Force India, we had front, middle, and rear. Front group is front wing, and rear group is basically the floor diffuser, and then brake ducts. And the middle team is the whole rest. So from the nose cone to the rear wing. So I was in the middle team, and then you're working on everything in between. The cool thing is you're working on everything that's visible. So from driver helmet, halo, side pods, also internal cooling ducts. And my main responsibility, something that I was really focused on, was the rear wing. So I redesigned the way how we designed rear wings. And because I redesigned the thing, I was always the one who was responsible for anything with rear wings. But it doesn't mean I only worked on rear wings. Like I said, also bargeboard area, driver helmet, spoilers, things on the nose and stuff. And also these responsibilities, especially in smaller flexible teams like Force India and Racing Point, can shift very quickly. So if they say, oh, we want to do a new nose cone, we need a couple of designers on that, then suddenly you're on the nose cone. Or if you need to work on new strakes for the floor, for example, and they need some additional people, then you're working on there as well.
Interesting. So we talked to another Ferrari aerodynamicist before, Li Qin, and she, in a big team, she was like, her only focus in 2022 was the rear wing, has the responsibility for all 6 rear wing packages, but nothing else. Okay. So compared to a small teams needs to be like more versatile. You need to do, you need to be where you are needed.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why coming from Audi, from the VW group, I also especially wanted to go to a smaller team to have this big exposure of everything.
Okay, I want to move to the Audi part, but just one more quick question. In your video, you talked about the transducer design for the front wheel rake. What does that do, and why is it copied across the pit lane?
So actually, the transducer design is for all around the car, so it can be for any kind of rake. A transducer is basically, so these rakes have keel probes. So you're taking the air pressure, and then through some air lines, you feed it into the transducer. The transducer is changing this pressure signal into an electric signal, so you can use it in the data logging. So these are small, usually with 16 ports, some small electronic devices. And when I came to the team, they had a 3D printed aerofoil shaped case for that, and you put the transducer inside and you connect all the air lines and then the cables, and you put it on the car with screws. So on the rake with screws. And that was one of my first jobs, to optimize that design. And first of all, the 3D printing technology already advanced, and we didn't have to have additional airlines inside a case. The case could be the airline. So we had internal channels inside the 3D printed part, which made the whole part a lot smaller. Then I realized that actually aerodynamically, it doesn't really make sense to shape them like an aerofoil, because the air is separated there anyway. So in order to save material and weight, I can just make the smallest possible shape. It doesn't have to be an aerofoil shape. So my part was already a lot smaller. And then the biggest advantage of my design was how you fixed it, because I was talking to the mechanics, and I was always the link between aero development and the people in production or at the track. And the people told me the biggest issue with these things is if we want to take it off or on, the problem is always we fix it with screws, which means that you always need a screw, 2 washers and a nut on every side. And then you need the right tools, and then the tools falls down, or the washer falls down, or it rattles loose while driving, and then the things fly off while testing and stuff like this. So can you think of something quick and better? And I was doing, so my hobby during my school time was RC cars. So I was racing with RC cars, and I remembered how we fixed our batteries and our bodies on the cars. So you just have like a pole with a couple of holes, and then you put a clip through, and that's it. And it's super quick. And if you want to, in some racing categories where you want to change the body quickly, you just have a longer clip that goes through 2 poles at the same time. So I was thinking we can do exactly the same at Force India. So I was just ordering some of these RC car clips. Just on eBay, basically.
So RC car clips that made it on a Formula One car.
Yes, and it was copied across the grid. Yeah.
Wow, and they are still using like till this date, right?
Yeah, every year I'm checking, and they're still using the same design. And so instead of having these 2 screws, I just had 2 3D printed poles, basically with these holes. So you just put it on, put the clip through, and then it's fixed and it can't fly off, and it's super easy to take it off as well.
Wow!
And that's why it was copied so often.
So it saved weight, obstruct air like less, and also helped the mechanics to put it and mount and unmount.
Wow.
Yeah,
and you didn't have to look for you don't have to look for any tools. So you don't need any tools. You just put it on with your fingers. You don't have to look for any parts lying around. You just need this one big clip, and that's usually colorful. So it's like pink or yellow or something like this. And that just works. And also it's a much smaller part. So you need less 3D printing material. And because of that, it's much faster to produce it.
Maybe you can send me a photo of the clip later, so I can put it in the show notes for everyone to see.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe better visualize it. I think after all of the F1 talk, we got to talk about your work before going into Formula One. So you were at Audi, right?
Yeah.
As a aero and also cooling engineer. So talk to us. What kind of cars or areas did you work on?
So first of all, I started there right after school. So I was in such a junior engineer program, which was 5 years. And I did an apprenticeship to become a car mechanic there. And at the same time, I was studying automotive engineering for Audi in Ingolstadt, because they have a cooperation with the university there. So everything is completely focused on cars. So you're working in the Audi development workshops. The other days you're studying automotive engineering there. So it's just, for me as a car interested guy, it was the paradise basically, because you have also Ingolstadt is a relatively small town, and Audi is a big company, so almost everybody is working at Audi. And I was living in a flat with 10 other young students, and everyone was working in a different department. So you always hear what's happening in the other areas of the company. So it was really a very nice time. I learned a lot. Learned how to practically work on cars, but also in theory and in the design offices. And because of that program, I worked in a lot of different departments. So I was in for example, the competitor test analysis, where we buy competitor cars or rent them and then just take them apart, measure everything, put them back together and give them back.
Can you name a few car models that you still remember today? The competitors'
Model
cars
S.
that impressed you?
Yeah, so I was just getting to that. So that was the Tesla time. So that was the first time that I was driving a Tesla Roadster. The Tesla Model S wasn't on the market yet. And the guys told me, this Roadster is really cool because it accelerates from 0 to 150 the same or faster than our R8. So you need to test it. And we had an internal test track at the Audi factory. So I could test it there. And it was the first time that I drove an electric car. And that was really quite an impression. It was quite nice. Yeah. And we just organized all kinds of competitor cars there, took them apart and checked them. And yeah, then I moved on, worked in the suspension pre-development, which is where you decide the suspension kinematics. This is also the famous department which designed the complicated Audi front suspension 20 years earlier. So that was quite interesting. Some of the guys were still there. After this, I worked in the suspension test department. So first in the department, which is like in theory designing the suspension kinematics. And then I was in the test department preparing the prototypes for the Nurburgring and other test tracks. And I was in packaging, in crash, in engine development. So just aerodynamics later on.
Like everything. So can you like hand build a car just by yourself? From the design to the manufacturing to the actual testing.
Yeah, I was always interested in the whole car system. And this program gave me complete freedom because we had the duty to work at the Audi factory or within the VW group at every holiday. So always in between semesters or even during the semester, we always had the duty to work in the factory, but we could choose this, the department ourselves. And because we were already Audi employees, they didn't have to employ us anymore. And we also got paid from another side. So we were always for free for the departments. So it was perfect for us to move around. We could just say, I'm a student at Audi already. Can I work here for the next 3 months or something? And then you were in these departments and I made good use of that, I would say. So I just went to all the interesting departments and had a good look. So after this 5 years, I had a pretty good overview over how the Audi company works, how the VW group works, and especially how the technical development works in all the different areas.
So talking about car models, specific car models. So were you at the Audi e-tron project, right?
I love that
which
car.
later became
it's so elegant.
There are a lot of them. So, there is the Audi e-tron, that's only called e-tron, but there's also the R8 e-tron, there's the e-tron GT, and so which one do you mean?
So did you work on all of them, or you mainly focused on one or two model? I think I remember you talked about working on the e-tron, the SUV model, which you got frustrated and later left to go to Formula 1.
That's not the one I was impressed. I really love the e-tron GT. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Audi R8 e-tron happened when I was still a student, when I was in this junior engineering program. So I was in the departments that had to do with that, and I also drove the e-tron at the time. But I wasn't an engineer working on it because I was still a student, but I was still in the development at this time. So I also I was there during the time when they had the first Nordschleife labs and stuff with all the issues that came up with that and how they fixed it and so on. So that was quite interesting because it was the first real Audi electric car experience. There were also other projects that were less known and that never made it to production at the time. And the Audi Q8 e-tron, or which later became the Q8 e-tron, this SUV model. So that was my first project, my first big project when I started at Audi as an engineer in the cooling department and aerodynamics department. And that is what this, e-tron GT lover, good. This is what this video is about. So I just wanted to give people a sense of how the technical development works.
Which feels really frustrating that you have to drive to the supplier to get a view of the the part.
I mean, it was also frustrating for me because the system is basically that the car manufacturers pick the best candidates from each course. So they want to have the best students. But once you get to the car manufacturer's office, you're not working on the actual car. You just handle emails and PowerPoints, and you just organize some budget to give it to the supplier. And then the supplier is doing the really interesting stuff. And these are your colleagues that were not so well in the student during your study. So usually it's more interesting to work for a supplier in German car industry back in the day than working for the manufacturer. And I didn't like that. So I took that back, basically. So I got my own CATIA license. I went to the supplier. They showed me how they do stuff, and then I did it myself. So I brought all that back internally to Audi, and which also a lot of colleagues didn't like, because it meant for them that they need to do more work, and because a lot of them didn't have a clue about CATIA, for example, or design programs. But you are the designer, so for me it was like you are employed as a designer.
Yeah, the Audi designer doesn't have a CATIA license.
Yeah, exactly.
Has to go to the supplier to view the model part in 3D.
But that's how it works in the whole car industry at the time. So BMW, Mercedes is no difference.
It's a more efficient business model, let's say.
Or it was a very efficient and tried and true business model, right?
If you think of it as a manager who's not involved in engineering, it seems like a good idea. But if you're on the ground and you're designing things, it's really bad. Because, for example, if I just want to change a cooling hose and I just want to route it somewhere else, the supplier will tell me, oh, I need 2 weeks for that. And they say, okay, you have 2 weeks. And in 2 weeks, we meet again. In 2 weeks, you realize, oh, he used the wrong data, so it's the wrong pipe now. Okay, I need another 2 weeks. So you need like a month until you have a new pipe. If I do it myself, I can have it done in 2 hours. So it's much, much faster. And my boss also said at the time, you just introduced a very different development speed here. Because I didn't have as many meetings as my colleagues, because I didn't have to communicate with so many people, because I did stuff myself. And you get things done much quicker. Or for example, the supplier calls you and tells you, at this one area, the hose is a bit too close to the gearbox, so we need to reduce the diameter from 20 millimeter to 18 millimeter. Is that important? Can we do that? And then usually what you would say is, okay, I give that information to my other supplier and he's doing the simulation about it. And then he will come back after 2 weeks and saying yes or no. In the end, I told him, send me the stuff, please. I will have a look at it myself. And then I realized he told me he's going to reduce it to 18 millimeters, but he was going to reduce it to 10 millimeter, which is a huge difference. And all these things wouldn't come up until the first prototype is driving. So, which means only 2 years later, you see that you have a problem and then you can't react anymore. You can avoid so many problems by just doing things in-house and doing things yourself, than just giving it to other people who don't know what the other one is doing.
Yeah, but I guess this kind of development structure and process was widely used, so everyone just like stay put and it was done like this before, and we're going to do it as the predecessors.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess I understand why you were so frustrated.
What's that German word called? Like the handbook that explained everything, the rules. I know there's a word that has no English version.
Lastenheft.
Oh yeah.
Lastenheft. Yeah. So this is just all the targets you need to meet.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that sometimes, when it works, it's a good thing. When it doesn't, it need to be fixed. But it's too late. Yeah.
We talked about the Nordschleife, and I think we can talk about the elephant in the room. Recent times, Xiaomi's headline grabbing lap times, and maybe we can talk more generally about the Chinese EVs. And so first off, you drove the Xiaomi SU7 last year.
Yeah, the Max. Not the Ultra.
Oh, okay. Okay. But still, SU7 Max was a very impressive car. So tell us about it. What did you think about the car?
I was quite impressed. Of course, especially because learning that this is the first real car the company does. And so I was in Beijing last year, and we went to a smaller car show, and I saw the car there. And they offered some like test runs. And there were a lot of interesting cars, but I said, I want to drive the Xiaomi. So later on, we drove to the dealership, and they had such a blue Xiaomi Max, the SU7 Max, and that was really nice. So really impressive. Nice design, but especially the quality level was really impressive. Outside bodywork, but also inside, and also how the car drove. And the thing is, about Chinese electric cars, you can ask whatever question you want. You won't be disappointed. So like if you ask about acceleration, high speed, warranty, if you ask about the suspension, if you look underneath the cars, everything looks great. So it's just like what we talked about before in the Racing Point days. The key was to copy the best car there is. So you have a good basis for yourself. And Chinese companies just took the best one in every area. For example, suspension is always a good example. What is the best suspension there is? Okay, let's copy that and put it on all of our cars. So now all the Chinese cars have really good suspension systems. So, and it's their own design now, but it's really impressive. Western car companies still try to save money, but if you look at like underneath Chinese cars, it's really impressive.
So from
Do you think it looks
F1's
like the
perspective,
Taycan?
Sorry?
Thomas?
Your question is more interesting. You should ask.
Okay, yeah. So the first thing is like, do you think the Xiaomi SU7 looks like the Porsche Taycan, like from the outside?
I mean, people say it looks similar, but it's obviously not exactly the same. But you have a lot of cars that look similar, so it's their own design. The rear end is very different. The front, I mean, because it's a bit of a rounder shape, you could say it looks a bit like Porsche, but it's still a different car.
Okay, so
that's
we
actually
got the
related
headline. Ex-F1 engineer says Xiaomi doesn't look like the Porsche.
Well, that actually related to my question is, I mean, do you think it's from F1's perspective, the copycat similarity is highly excusable, but also from like a German engineer perspective, and from your understanding of the like what Germans, the general public, would think about a car that has a lot of similarity copied from other cars, would that be something that would influence the sales or some recognition of the brand? That's something we would actually be curious about.
So you mean that if Chinese companies are copying something of German companies, or?
Let's specifically just talk about the SU7, SU7 and Porsche.
I mean, the difference is that the Porsche Taycan was created in an environment where you have a working car company that's producing combustion engine cars, right? And the project at this time was that basically the VW company saw in 2013 that Tesla brought the Tesla Model S and it's really working. So we have to do something about it. So how can we fight back as the VW group? And it was decided at the end of 2013, we do it a free race. So VW is producing the ID.3, so small cars. And that's the basis for a lot of other small cars like Skoda Enyaq and stuff like this. Audi is doing the big SUV, so the e-tron. So we have the e-tron or SUV basis for future electric cars. And Porsche is doing the Taycan. So we have a basis for sports cars. And that was the environment where this whole project started. And of all these engineering teams like Wolfsburg VW and Weissach Porsche and Ingolstadt Audi, they don't really like to talk to each other. They had to talk to each other at this time. And we were made to cooperate, I would say. But still
your wills.
Yeah, but the cars are very different. Like ID.3, Taycan, and the e-tron are very different cars. You could see which one succeeded, and so it's a very different. I mean, you can see who was the most variants afterwards. So there are a lot of variants of the ID.3. There's ID.4, 5, 6.
Okay.
Yeah,
and
so Taycan was not considered Audi as a successful model?
I mean, there is the Audi, but they're not much else.
No, I mean like Taycan. And we know Audi is having some like struggling, but we would normally consider Taycan as one of the most successful electric model.
I mean, Taycan has its own issues because Porsche slightly over-engineered the car. For example, they put in a gearbox, they put in a too complex cooling system and stuff like this. So we were always cooperating with them on the cooling system level, and it was just much too complicated what they did. And the Taycan is also a relatively expensive car, which also resulted in this super high price when it was new. And because people don't really appreciate that, the prices dropped so much that a lot of people lost like 100K within the first 3 years of the car. So it's a massive value decrease. And that's why a lot of people in Europe stay away from these cars, because you just lose so much money with that. And on the other hand, it wasn't really better than the Tesla, because you only have 4 seats instead of 7, like in the Model S. The performance is similar. Maybe you can drive a whole Nordschleife lap instead of just half a lap with a Tesla. But
like normal people don't do that every day.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, for most of the people, it's just to impress their relatives or their girlfriend by 1-2 fast accelerations, and that's it.
Yeah, and like basically every high performance EV can do like 1 or 2 fast acceleration. They can do that fine. But it seems like the Taycan did a lot of engineering and like on the cooling, on the the track performance, but like everything else.
Can we have another conclusion on why Nordschleife is actually killing cars, make them bad cars, unnecessary cars?
Nordschleife is just the hardest proving ground for anything.
But I mean, like Xiaomi is going to Nordschleife and they build a research center there, and they are determined to stay. And also, like just the recent news, the SU7, the prototype did a 622, and also the production SU7 Ultra did a 704, which is just so impressive. I think it's just last week we saw Taycan with Mantai packages on them, maybe trying to retake the fastest production EV throne. Do you think they can do it?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, it will be like a fully production car. I hope so. So no cage, no slicks, to just really like the customer can buy it. And then there will be a race over the next years. Who will have the best Nordschleife time? Who will beat the 7 minutes first in a fully production car? And I think they will be able to do it. But I also think that Xiaomi will fight back.
Wow.
Yeah. The problem is, yes, they can take the lap back, but they're selling at triple the price. When you actually, it's like you beat up a kid. Like it's not something you should be proud of.
Exactly.
Yeah, find someone your size.
Exactly.
Actually, the kid beat you up, and you're trying to beat him up again.
Exactly. The thing is that there's a very different environment, right? So like Xiaomi did the car for the first time. They didn't really have experience with cars. So they just did whatever is best. But legacy car makers have a certain history of things. So they say, no, we do it this way because we always done it this way. And just what I was talking about before with using suppliers in the development chain, usually new car companies don't have that. They really employ capable engineers and they do the job in-house instead of outsourcing stuff. And outsourcing is such a disease in the industry. You can really say, because you just slow everything down, and instead of saving money, you spend so much more money. And then this results in cars not being as performant and at the same time being more expensive.
So you think the outsourcing and so much reliant on suppliers is one of the major shortfalls, like for those traditional automakers compared to the newer EV brands, like Xiaomi or BYD?
Yeah, it's just that they all got lazy. You're employed there as an engineer, but you don't do real engineering work. You just give it to someone else, and then you tell them what they did wrong and stuff. So it's not really a very efficient way of working. That's why I enjoyed going to Formula One, because I wanted exactly the opposite after that experience. I wanted to be in charge of everything. I wanted to do everything in-house. I didn't want to go to suppliers for anything. And Formula One is perfect for that.
Okay, actually, there's some extra information I would like to maybe discuss with you on this issue. Because from our side, we have seen a lot of Chinese companies who's been doing this called vertical consolidations, make everything in-house, especially what BYD has been doing for a couple of years. But actually from maybe 3-4 years ago, they start to de-in-housing. Get some outsiders to help, because they actually faced the first thing is they did some money by getting things in-house, but then they noticed because everything's in-house, they have no market competition. In terms of that, they were actually given a very concrete example of the boss found out why the other cars has this function but we don't. Is because it was in-house, so it does not integrated into the trend of the market. So they've done their in-house progress to almost 100%, and then now they realize maybe we should give the seat and some of the controlling parts to the market, actually to benefits from the improvement of the total markets, so you don't get left out. And also one more thing is BYD makes both the car and the battery, so battery is very dangerous. So for other cars, like a
CATL.
CATL. Yeah. They have to make sure the quality is always in the best efforts they can make, because otherwise they will lose orders, or it's a bad PR image. But for BYD, if their batteries start to have some problem, who can they blame? It's themselves.
Yeah, but on the other hand, the battery is the heart of the car. So for combustion engine cars, the combustion engine is the heart of the car. So the manufacturer should make the engine by himself. And for battery electric cars, it's the other way around. So they should make the battery in-house, because that's the heart of the car.
Yeah, but the reality is the CATL is actually taking over the majority of the market. So most of even today, the car companies in China, except for BYD, they all use outsider battery suppliers, because it's actually make the technology improvement faster, because more capital can be concentrated on one or two major companies instead of splitting up. I think that's what the European companies was trying to do with Northvolt, although it failed, but that was they tried.
Yeah. No, I'm not talking about the battery cells. So of course you get the battery cells from a big experienced supplier, but I'm talking about putting the cells together to one large battery. That should still be the responsibility of the car manufacturer. How do you package it? How big are the modules? How do you connect them? And what's the cooling like and stuff like this? That should still be in-house.
I think CATL realized that. So they actually make the whole chassis themselves. They're trying to sell the whole chassis with packaged batteries to the car companies, that they can take over more shares in the. So I think they agree with you, because they are afraid that the cars factories should make this themselves, but they're trying to persuade them not to.
Yeah, if I would be, say, ATL, I would do the same thing.
So I guess the car companies and also the battery companies like CATL and also BYD are just doing what's the maximum advantages to them. This is a really interesting discussion topic. So the advantages and also the disadvantages of a traditional car brand, the development process compared to the newer generations. Some are vertical consolidation, and maybe some of the companies have done it a bit too much and now it's trying to fall back a little bit. In your opinion, what's the perfect balance between using suppliers, outsourcing, compared to doing everything in-house?
I mean, the perfect strategy. So we were talking about this more than 10 years ago at Audi, and we were discussing this a lot. What's the best strategy to make the transition as a traditional car brand to electric cars? And you could see different strategies. BMW, for example, is just designing all the cars for all the drivetrains, which means you have all the disadvantages of every drivetrain in every car.
Doesn't sound so good.
Just make it bigger. Make it
bigger. Make it bigger, make it heavier. And Audi, for example, now try to have an A6, which is electric, and an A6 that is with combustion engine, which is also confusing people. At the time, we had the idea that internally you could found a new company, a startup company within the big company. And the startup company is completely on their own, but with all the advantages of a big company. So if you need big machines, if you need resources, you have them in a big company, but it's still working like a small startup. You just put the best people inside there. But now the problem of legacy car makers is always that if they say we want the most experienced people, these are usually the people that are working at the car company for the longest time. And these are usually the people that are just canceling every innovation because it makes work. It's creating additional work. And I've experienced that so many times that people also directly told me, if you come around with any innovation, I will always cancel that because it just makes additional work.
Oh, right.
And this is what
said that out loud.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So directly to your face. So they just say, you want to do something new, that just creates additional work. So we won't do that. We always did it this way, so we won't do it. And that's also the reason why the traditional car makers are struggling. And the new ones don't see the problems because they don't know about it.
Yeah, I think that leads perfectly to, I talked to Martin last time about the 4-letter Audi. Yeah, they are trying. So we can see a lot of the German automakers, they are trying to do collaborations with Chinese EV companies. So beforehand, Audi and also BMW and Mercedes, they collab with Chinese companies 20, 30 years ago, and they inputted a lot of their know-how and their technical staff like into China and brought up a lot of the newer engineers. And now it's like the reverse. Now the Chinese EV has the advantage, and now it's trying to do a collaborations. For example, VW with Xiaopeng, and also Audi with Shangqi. So it's called Zhiji, but their English name is IM Motors. I don't think anyone knows them as IM Motors. So yeah, so the four-letter Audi, that is what I want to ask you about. What do you think of the concept of, for example, the Chinese development center doing the internal, all the smart stuff, and the German part do what they traditionally knows the best, the chassis and also the dynamics and driving part of the car?
First of all, I think in the past we've seen joint ventures between Western and Chinese brands because Chinese car companies needed that to get up to speed quickly to make good cars. Today we see exactly the opposite. So the Chinese brands outperform the Western brands, and now the Western brands need the cooperations with the Chinese brands to be up to speed with the latest trends because they are so slow in development. And for example, I always compare it with my kids. So if I take my kids to a car show, they always like the Chinese cars most, and the other ones are all boring because inside Chinese cars they have so many nice little features, and you have the little
fridges,
helper on the dashboard.
And
and you can just play like video games in the cars. And if there's a German car, if there's a VW or Porsche, they're just bored. They say, I can't do anything here. There's no screen and there's no game or something. So this is exactly what a lot of customers feel. Just with kids, you see it very obvious. And
they won't hold back about the criticism, but maybe adults they'll like think about it, but the kids, they just talk what they think.
Yeah, exactly. And this is exactly what the traditional Western brands need now. So they need to be quicker. They were just too slow in developing these technologies, and the Chinese brands are there, so they need the corporations now for this. Yeah. On the other hand, they try now to create a new brand there to keep the quality of the past. But to be honest, I'm not really sure if the traditional Audi company in Germany can still keep the quality of the past. So how can the new one do that? I mean, we can see that with their cars right now. And the reason, especially for the VW group or especially for Audi, is because they had a change of CTO like every 2 years now for the last 13 years. So maybe a lot of people know that if you're working in a big company and you get a new boss, first of all development stops. And first of all, everyone has to present themselves to the new boss and explain to him why are they the most important people and why do they need more budget or something like this. And this is a process that takes around half a year. And in that half year...
Every 2 year of CTO change. So basically just all presentation, PowerPoints, and slides.
Exactly.
No development.
All development stops. The new CTO also needs to like stand his ground. He basically needs to cancel some projects and introduce some new projects. So there's a big shuffle. And then people just say, you know what, I will just sit tight and wait what's going to happen. And this is why the development speed is so slow. And at the same time, Chinese new car brands don't have this problem, and they are developing, and suddenly they're outperforming the Western brands. And then now we need corporations to catch up.
We talked about a lot of places and an aspect that the newer brands are doing so well, but there's still, I think, some part that the newer startups can learn from the traditional brands. What do you think? For example, chassis, driving dynamics, things that maybe the newer EV companies still has a lot to learn.
I mean, the difference is also that where do you really need this high driving performance, high driving speeds in the world and stuff? So, I mean, we in Germany, we have high speeds here, and people really do that.
The Autobahn, yeah.
Yeah, but when I'm driving in Beijing, for example, and we are in the city circle, and I see there's an Audi, and he's driving 80 kilometers per hour constantly, and I'm always thinking this car is so over-engineered for here because it's engineered for doing 250 kilometers per hour. So the cooling is designed for 250 kilometers per hour, all the systems with suspension and stuff. So it's so over-engineered. So where do you want to have this increased dynamics? of course, Nordschleife, but which customer in the world will go to the Nordschleife and do that with their car? It's not a lot of them.
Xiaomi took their customers to the Nordschleife recently.
yeah, of course. But I mean, compared to the big car market in China, it's only a small portion of people that really do that in the end.
There's 10 of them very happy with the product. The rest never understand why.
Exactly, yeah. But sometimes this advertisement makes the other people buy the cars, so that's still a win for them. So, you just always have to decide how much do you put in there.
People who buy Patagonia would never go climbing. People who buy like Nike running shoes never goes for running. The meaning is to sell the product. Actually, I have something very curious to discuss with you because I have a family friend who is about like 50, 60 years old. He has been doing like car suppliers for German companies like Mercedes for 30 years. So for him, he would never buy a Chinese car is because he's certain. For example, when the German car was developed, it takes them guaranteed like 8,000 hours to test the one function. But for a Chinese company, they don't find the necessity of doing that much. Probably they're going to reduce that to half or 1/3. So he thinks all this like redundancy was contributed to the safety at the end. But for Chinese companies, they have maybe higher technologies. Maybe they don't find the necessity of doing that many development. So they will make the car developed faster. Probably one generation could be only last for 2-3 years. What do you think of this contrast? Is this kind of the safety warranty important, necessary for the customers?
So that is one thing that is like special about probably the German car makers, that these target lists, so Lastenheft, what we talked about before, the things that the car is required to do is extremely high, that the cars need to last for a very long time, but also that the market is very different. For example, here in Germany, you see a lot of cars that are older than 10 years, but they are in perfect condition. So they still look like new cars because people really like to buy something nice and then keep it in nice shape and drive it for a long time. My newest car is 17 years old right now. And the Chinese market works very differently. Like, for example,
I have no concept of a car from 17 years ago because I don't see it anywhere on the street.
It's a VW Phaeton, so I guess you see it in China.
Wow. We talked about that car like 15 years ago.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that was a very popular topic 10 years ago. Yeah, that's how people spend like Mercedes money for a Volkswagen.
When I see the Chinese part of the family, so my wife is from Beijing, so if we talk to relatives there, the perception is very different. So people want to have a new car every few years. They want to have the latest technology. The Western market works a bit differently. People don't always want to have the latest technology. They want to have something nice and they want to keep it in shape. So maybe also that's why the development targets are slightly different.
What about safety? Do you think like German standard for sure would guarantee a better safety compared with any other standard?
Yeah, that's an interesting topic. I was laughing about that quite a lot because China introduced this new crash test and then everyone was failing except for Chinese cars. You remember this where you crash into the back of...
25%. Crashing to the back of a truck, right?
Is it just a 5% overlap or something? And you crash into the back of a truck with the A-pillar, basically. Because I can still remember like 20 years ago, the German car magazines were making fun of the Chinese cars that were failing in the crash tests here. And now it's the other way around. So Chinese cars are actually doing really well. And China even introduced a new standard and everybody else is failing. So that's quite interesting. So I think China just outperformed them there because they can do the standard Western tests pretty well right now. And at the same time, you have new standards that you develop your cars for, and then others are struggling with that.
Well, I was thinking about maybe we will do like a 50-50 about like, some part of the Chinese brands are doing great, but the other part they're still learning. But
I mean, yeah.
in the end, we were like, oh, okay, everything the German companies do are so lackluster and so behind. And I think there gotta be some
We're
part of the...
We're taught to be humble, but I really can't after your what you just said.
No, but I mean... There are also a lot of new Chinese companies, and some of my relatives said, as quickly as they came to the market, they will also disappear. So that might be one of the issues there as well, that a lot of new Chinese companies come on very quickly. Maybe there is
not anymore.
Okay.
that thing also died quickly as well.
Yeah. So some of them already went away again. And then if car companies come on quickly, that they can't be as engineered as well as a car company that does this for 70 years or longer. But
about 5 years ago, there's about 50 new brands coming up. In China, they're all selling cars, but now I think there's only about 10 to 15 left. And about in another 5 years, that number would reduce under 10, I think. So people who cannot sell cars and maintain quickly, the company also die quickly as well.
That's pretty much what happened in Germany like 100 years ago. So in the 1920s, you have a lot of...
That's how Audi was formed.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so you had like a lot of small car companies and only the best survived. And now we only have a few left.
Yeah, it's such a parallel storyline to the German.
Yeah. Whenever I think about this question, I always think about, is that a matter of countries like China or Germany, or is only a matter of old and new? Well, sometimes we make fun on like Indian cars and something, and I'm always thinking in 20 years I will have to apologize to an Indian podcast saying like we used to. Do you think it's more of like a timing issue or is a matter of cultural issue?
Of car brands advancing, you mean?
Yeah. In terms of like car brands, who's going to replace whom?
We will just see who will perform best and who will design the best things. So it's really hard to say.
Yeah, because it's also from that family friend. He told me like 30 years ago, the German people always ask us to, can you do it faster? We need this on Monday morning. But it's like, Chinese people don't work on weekends. And 30 years later, it's like the Chinese, you guys should do it faster. We really need that on Monday morning. And Germans like, we're still on summer vacation, something.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So did the culture changed? Yeah, what changed?
So problem is in Germany, and a lot of Germans are annoyed by that, is that everyone's getting lazy and people have a lot of holidays. A lot of people only work part-time now. They only work 32 hours per week instead of 40 or more in the past. And so this workforce is just not there anymore. And people have to wake up that we really need to accelerate now. And China is doing that, but Germany didn't wake up yet. That's the problem.
So I guess the problem is like twofold. Germany is a little bit slowing down, but China is actually doing the acceleration. So now, like probably, after only 10, 20 years, the contrast is so stark that we can see it's such a different working culture in China and also in Europe. We have a lot of friends that worked in Europe, car manufacturer brands, even Formula One teams. But I mean, like Formula One teams, they do, like you guys did work really hard, right? Like the competition and all the pressure.
That's different. Yeah.
The traditional car manufacturers are just...
Yeah. So I can give you an example there. For example, so when I was starting at Audi after my study, I wanted to have a 40-hour contract. So which means I can work for 40 hours a week. Everything that I work more would be an additional hour so that I can reduce later. But they were not able to do that. So young joiners only get a 35-hour contract. No. So I was working 50 hours a week anyway, which means that I had 15 additional hours per week, which means that because one working day is only 7 hours, which means that I had more than 2 free days per week that I worked or that I created, right? So if you pile that up over the year, then suddenly I have so much holidays, I'm not allowed to go to work because I have to reduce my additional hours, that I can't really work anymore. And a lot of people were annoyed by that, but this is what the unions in Germany did. So we have a too good life. That's a problem.
Yeah, in China, there's a word for that. It's called 卷.
Okay.
So it's basically describing like a person in the company that works like really hard. And so it kind of forces other people that has to work hard as well. But I guess.
And when I went to Formula One, it was the other way around. So you're employed for a certain job. It doesn't matter how much time you need for that. If you need like 12 hours a day to do that, then it's your problem. If you can do it after 6 hours, then it's also fine. So very different culture, and I like that more.
Okay. So also I have another topic is I've heard you started to do your own consulting job, and I think with all your knowledge and experience, and I think in our podcast there's a lot of professionals who's listening to us. Maybe we can find you some clients in our podcast as well. But we would like to know what kind of projects and what's your life after Formula One? What's you been doing lately?
So I was starting my own company after Formula One. first in Britain the first year, and then I moved to Germany, and now I'm doing the same thing here. And like you said, I'm consulting for smaller teams, but also still Formula One teams. So I'm also going like into Formula One teams and training their new staff to getting them up to speed quicker. So the company doesn't have to do it. They are saving the settling in time. And I can just make a crash course for them for 1 or 2 weeks. And I'm consulting on smaller teams. So people who build their own race vehicles. That doesn't just have to be a car. Also motorcycles, aeroplanes, boats, sailing yachts, and stuff like this. So whenever people run into issues, aerodynamic issues, but also cooling issues, that's always the classic thing, because a lot of people know about engines, a lot of people know about suspension, but not so many people know about aerodynamics because you can't really see it. Even less people know about cooling. And a lot of people run into cooling issues when they build their first own race car. So that is the classic thing. And either I help the people through some video chats, some video appointments, or I go to the track directly and help them there. I'm also then designing and producing aerodynamic parts, so air intakes, neck ducts, outlets, any air guides, any adapters. For example, I recently had a customer with a Toyota Supra, and he wanted to have a very specific air mass sensor, and he needed an adapter for that where this sensor can fit and it still fits with his large new air filter, and then I could design something like this for him. I can also see the CFD simulate the stuff, so I can design, engineer it, and also produce it for other people.
Basically what you accumulated throughout your career, no matter Audi and also the Formula One teams, so like everything on the car relates
you can
to
finally
aero
do
and
everything
cooling.
yourselves.
Yeah, exactly. And it's also very like diverse. Like sometimes it's really just a consulting topic, so very much theory. Sometimes it's really about hands-on stuff, like really building something and producing something. And I'm also having my own workshop here where I restore my own cars. So I'm also working on my own vehicles here.
Oh yeah. Obviously you talked about your cars in detail on your channel. So you got a Phaeton, a Lupo, a Viper, and a DKW F9. Anything else?
I have a Corvette.
Okay.
A Corvette C6, and then a Smart Roadster Coupe. That was my first car as a student, and I never wanted to sell it at the time. And I still have that.
So many cars.
And I have a Trabant as well.
So I guess the apprenticeship and also the stuff you learned at the Audi company and manufacturing paid off now, right? So you can actually like work on the cars yourself.
Yeah. Before I was working for Audi, I was when I was still in school. After school, I was always working in a local car workshop here, and then I worked in a paint shop and a body shop. So I just worked in all these areas, so I can do the stuff myself now.
You talked about the training for future Formula One engineers. Can you tell us more about that? What's the process like?
So that's usually about how to use CATIA in a Formula One environment. Because the problem is that a lot of universities don't teach CATIA, they just teach SolidWorks, which is the kindergarten version of CATIA, but it works in a very different way. So it's just a cheaper program to teach students somehow to design, how to somehow design something. Formula One teams expect you to know CATIA or Siemens NX. These are the two programs we are using. And they want people to be up to speed as quickly as possible for these designs. And the way how Formula One is using these programs is very different from what you learn somewhere else. So that's why I'm teaching them the very specifics. What do Formula One teams want? It's all about keeping the development speed high. You know, you don't want to create something super complicated that no one else can understand but you. If you are not there, if you're pulled to another project, then no one else can take over. And this is slowing the team's progress down. And suddenly you have the new part on the car, not 2 weeks after, you have it on the car 4 weeks after, and then you were missing out in the races. So it's really important to design everything in a very simple and very understandable way. And there are certain engineering standards that they want to keep. So if everyone works to that standard, everyone can understand the designs better.
Okay. So which team do you mostly collaborate with? So what the reason is wanna see like who's having the most heavy hirement lately?
So basically working with all the teams, but all British-based teams. Let's say that.
Okay, so we know the Italian.
So not
teams
Ferrari.
Yeah, not the Italian teams. No, they always like to speak Italian.
Okay. Yeah, I guess that's one of the reasons.
Like they even like all the new hires for Ferrari, most of them they also speak Italian.
No. So office language is English, but but still Italians just like to speak very Italian.
Okay, I see.
Right.
So about your Sauber?
Yeah, I'll say, Sauber was opening technically Audi was opening a new technical center in the UK, right? So just to accelerate things. Oh yes, speaking of, you worked at Audi, even though not the Formula One team. What do you expect next year when they come in? They suspended all their other racing stuff and focused all their resources on Formula One. Do you think they'll do good?
I would hope for a solid mid-team performance. I hope there will be somewhere in the middle because there are some unknowns. There's the new Audi engine, which is quite a challenge. On the other hand, you have experienced manufacturers, engine manufacturers like Ferrari, Honda, Mercedes. So it's going to be a big challenge for them. But usually if Audi decides to do something, they do it properly, like Le Mans, Dakar, and so on. So I'm hopeful, but they did a lot of the right choices, but it's also not easy because Sauber traditionally has huge problems of getting good engineers to Switzerland, and that's why they opened the new office in Bistro now. But on the other hand, if you have a design office in another country, it's always a challenge. It's always better if you have everyone in-house. Like at Aston Martin, for example, we had one large office, so one room with all the 200 engineers inside, and then everyone is just there. If you need to know something about electronics, you just go a few desks further and you can speak to the people. And that is really the key of the high development speed. And I also experience what it's like if you have a development office somewhere else in the world. You always have problems with the time change and meetings and internet connection and all kinds of stuff. You just can't meet the other person at the coffee machine. You just always meet at official meetings, and it's a different atmosphere, and it's not as efficient as just being under the same roof.
So it slows everything down, like the car manufacturing world, the meeting and setup and all the suppliers, right? So you talked about Dakar, Le Mans. I think we have to plug your channel. Your channel is xBsport 赛车工程堂 on Bilibili. You're uploading all the videos.
Yeah.
Tell us about what's your future plan for the channel. You cover so many aspects of the automobile industry. You do F1, obviously, and also MotoGP, WEC, Dakar, road cars, even ski jumping. That's
like a diary of yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm just doing everything that I'm interested in. So everything that I think is not covered properly. It all started basically with the Bugatti Bolide. So when the Bugatti Bolide was released in 2020, there was not a lot of good coverage about it. So I wanted to know about the engineering specifics of the car. There was no one doing it. So I started that with my first video. Then it was quite popular, and then I kept on doing that. And I expanded on more and more topics I'm interested in. And this is how it all started.
So especially with the MotoGP Aerodynamics ones, because obviously nowadays Aero is playing a huge part in MotoGP, but not a lot of people are talking about it, and especially from a F1 background. So
because it doesn't feel like very aero heavy sport.
Yeah,
it is.
The biggest aero is the shape of you.
But I mean, after your video, you explain so well. Now they are using a lot of the concept in F1, even ground effect, for example the Aprilia. So they're doing.
Wait, MotoGP ground effect?
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow, really?
Yeah, go.
It's so okay. I haven't watched that one yet.
Video. Yeah,
this is very interesting. Yeah, so counterintuitive.
Yeah, go follow Martin's channel. So on YouTube and also Bilibili xBsport. So search on Bilibili. There's actually another xBsport. So just make sure we'll do
the account.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now the real one's here. Yeah.
Yeah, and we can also post your email address to if there are any inquiries
for any
we can
business.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
We can just put it in the show notes as well.
Yeah, exactly.
That would be great.
So, do you want to talk about your old cars? Which one's your favorite?
So my problem is basically that I have to drive all of them, otherwise they get like damaged from just standing around. So the thing is, if I always wait for a nice Sunday afternoon with good weather, I never drive them. So I always drive them daily. So I also go shopping with my Viper, or I take the kids out with the Trabant or something like this, or grocery shopping with the Corvette is actually really good because the trunk is really big. And so
Corvette.
This is how I keep all the cars driving. And that's why I really enjoy driving them in the daily life, because they are so different. My son said to me, we really need to buy a normal car because we don't have a single normal one.
Well, I guess the VW Phaeton is the most normal one, right? Even though it's set like 17 years old. Do you still drive your F9, the DKW F9?
That is the only car that's not driving at the moment, because I have to renew the brakes basically from the pedal to the wheel. So the complete brake system needs to be renewed. I did the outside. I gave it the shape or the look of the 1930s again. So when it was designed, I wanted to have this pre-war look, because after the war in East German times, they did some design stuff I didn't like. So I just gave it back how it looked like before. The thing about my cars is, the concept is, I'm doing an historical video about a certain car project, like the Trabant, like the Lupo or the F9. And usually I'm so fascinated by the thing myself that I just buy it after the video, and then I drive it myself.
Wow.
and then I can do some videos about the car, like what it's like to drive. So first on YouTube or on Bilibili, you have a video about the history of the car, the development history. And then I buy the car myself, and then I restore it, and then I'm driving it, and I can explain more details.
Yeah, the good thing is, like, those historic cars are not that kind of expensive, like compared to the Aston Martin Valkyrie video series you did. Are you going to buy it?
Exactly, yeah. I'm trying to.
That's right. Okay. So maybe
like a cheaper crashed one.
All right. Okay. Another topic I have here is about the F1 movie. Have you seen it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it was very good.
I want to ask you about the development scene in there. So, what do you think of it? What do you think of it from a ex F1 engineer's point of view?
So I was actually quite impressed by how accurate the stuff is in there, and there is not really something that was really, really bad. So sometimes you have like motorsport movies where they step into the F1 car and turn the ignition key or something. F1 cars don't have the ignition key. So things like this, mistakes like this didn't happen. And the story was quite good. The technology behind it was quite good. The strategy stuff they showed there was also quite interesting and not unrealistic. So I was quite impressed, actually.
About the development part. So I think in the wind tunnel and also CFD, you think all of those are those accurate? Or?
I mean, they still have to make it interesting for the people who watch the movie. So it's not the race engineer who's at the pit wall and then also sitting in the wind tunnel developing the car. It's not just this one person. So But you can overlook that. I mean, it's just to make the movie more interesting. People get a sense of how the F1 team is working in general.
Yeah, we talked before. So basically, Kate in the movie is basically working as a race engineer, as a performance engineer, as a CFD engineer, as a wind tunnel engineer, and also technical director. So like,
and also driver's girlfriend.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Also, that didn't happen before.
Is there like actual like in real life, a driver hit on not the technical director per se, but anyone else in the company or the race team? Do you know?
Office moments.
Usually, not to my knowledge, not really, because sometimes or pretty often drivers are not really there. It also depends on the driver. Like Stroll was usually never there, but other drivers come to the office quite frequently and speak to the engineers. But usually they don't really get into a relationship or something.
Yeah,
like that.
they need enough time spending together. I think that's why Fernando is having a girlfriend as a reporter, because they always stay together. He
gets some good news. Yeah.
Right.
All right.
I think that's basically about it. It's such a pleasure to have you here, Martin. And I mean, like for the 2 hours here, we learned so much about not only Formula One, also how frustrating it is to work for a traditional car manufacturer. A lot more to learn. And also, if anyone wants to get into the WeChat group, just message me on Bilibili. We'll put Buchan's channel in the description below. And so if you want to follow him and see all the interesting car, not only car, like everything, video,
stuff
just to go stuff. Yeah, that's his stuff. Just go to Martin's channel. Okay, so I think this is it for this episode.
Thank you very much.
Thank you everyone for listening, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.